Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. The day Cade Westbrook rolled up to his new lakefront haven, he expected peace and quiet, not a hostile HOA president demanding his keys. She wanted his dock, his land, his freedom. What she got was a former U.S. Marshal ready to turn her power game into her downfall. I pulled up to the long gravel drive just after noon, my truck bed stacked with boxes, a few tool cases, and the kind of folding chairs you buy when you haven't moved the real furniture yet. The sun was bouncing off the lake in the distance, and for a moment, all I felt was that satisfying click in my head. You know, the one that says this place is mine. 14 acres of privacy, my own stretch of shoreline, a dock that had seen better days but was about to get a full rebuild, and, most importantly, no HOA breathing down my neck. The title company had made that crystal clear, and as a former U.S. Marshal, I tend to remember the fine print. I didn't even make it to the gate before I saw them. 3 people standing just inside the property line like a reception committee. Front and center was a woman in her 50s with a rigid smile and a haircut sharp enough to cut paper. She wore a cream-colored cardigan over a Lakeview Shores HOA polo, clutching a clipboard like it was a badge. Flanking her were 2 guys in neon safety vests with the same logo. One of them had the build of a retired linebacker gone soft. The other was wiry and twitchy, glancing between me and the gate like he was guarding Fort Knox. I put the truck in park and stepped out, keeping my voice level. "Afternoon, can I help you?" The woman's smile widened just enough to make me uneasy. "Mr. Westbrook, welcome to Lakeview Shores. I'm Karen Eldridge, the HOA president. We just need to take care of a few formalities before you move in." I rested my forearms on the doorframe of the truck. "Formalities?" She checked her clipboard. "Yes. First, I'll need a full set of keys to your house for our records. Second, you'll need to fill out our new resident registration form. Third, we'll schedule your interior inspection so we can ensure everything meets community standards. And finally, you'll need to review and sign the HOA covenants, which include granting all residents access to the lakefront and dock on your property." I let that hang in the air for a second, then chuckled. "Let me stop you right there. I'm not a member of your HOA. This property isn't part of Lakeview Shores. So you won't be getting keys, you won't be inspecting my house, and you definitely won't be turning my dock into a community swim club." Karen's smile froze in place, and the linebacker shifted his weight like he was itching to step forward. "Mr. Westbrook," she said in a syrupy tone, "all properties within our boundaries fall under the HOA. There are no exceptions. You'll find it's much easier to cooperate than to fight the system." I reached into the truck, pulled out the laminated copy of my parcel map, and handed it to her. "This is the boundary line from the county assessor's office. See my lot? Not shaded, not in your jurisdiction, and the title company confirmed. No HOA." She barely glanced at it before passing it back. "Maps can be wrong, paperwork gets misplaced, but what's important is maintaining harmony. Without our oversight, things slip, and I'd hate for you to run into problems with your occupancy permits or lake access rights." That was a thinly veiled threat, if I'd ever heard one. I pulled my phone from my pocket and tapped the record button, making sure the screen was visible. "You're implying that unless I hand over my keys and sign your rules, you'll make trouble for my property?" Her lips twitched. "I'm saying it would be unfortunate if misunderstandings arose. We prefer to avoid unpleasantness." "Good," I said. "Then you'll have no problem leaving my gate the way you found it." "We're done here." The wiry one muttered something under his breath, and Karen's eyes narrowed just enough to show the steel under that HOA charm. "You'll regret being difficult, Mr. Westbrook. Enjoy your afternoon." They walked back toward a dark blue SUV parked just outside my drive. Before she got in, Karen turned, gave me one of those tight little waves that could just as easily mean "have a nice day" or "I'll see you in court," and drove off. I stood there for a moment, watching the dust settle, my phone still recording in my hand. Whatever game she thought she was starting, she'd picked the wrong property owner to play it with. 2 days later, I rolled back toward the property with a rental truck full of heavier furniture, oak dining table, leather couch, the bed frame I swore I'd never move again. I was already picturing the couch facing the big bay window when I saw it. The gate I'd left open was now a brand new aluminum panel with a thick chain looped through it and a gleaming brass padlock. Parked sideways in front of it was a white security SUV with Lakeview Shores Protective Services plastered on the doors. Two men in matching security polos stood by the vehicle, arms crossed. One was the same linebacker from my first encounter. The other was a stranger, but his stance screamed wannabe cop. The linebacker raised a hand like he was flagging down a car at a DUI checkpoint. "You can't enter," he called out. "This is a private road maintained by the HOA. Only authorized vehicles allowed beyond this point." I killed the engine, climbed out, and pulled a manila folder from the cab. "Wrong. This road is county maintained, public access. Here's the assessor's map. Here's the maintenance ledger from the county's own website. You're trespassing by blocking it." The new guy smirked. "Our orders are to deny access until you clear things with the board." I dialed 911 on speaker, my voice even. "Yes, this is Cade Westbrook. I'm at the north entrance to my property on Ridgewater Drive. I've got private security blocking a public road with a chained gate. I need deputies out here to remove them." That got their attention. 10 minutes later, a black and white county cruiser rolled up. Two deputies stepped out. One I recognized from a background check I'd done for a mutual friend years ago. We shook hands briefly before I handed him the same documents I'd shown the guards. He studied them, then turned to the security duo. "This is public right-of-way. You can't obstruct it. Remove the lock and clear the gate now, or you'll be cited for interfering with traffic." The linebacker hesitated until the deputy added, "And I'll be taking statements from both of you for our report. Your choice whether that includes a ride to booking." They moved fast after that. One produced a key, the chain clattered to the ground, and the SUV was backed out of the way. I drove the rental through, the deputies following until I cleared the property line. As my crew unloaded the furniture, I caught sight of a black sedan parked half a block away, angled so its driver could fill my gate. Even from that distance, I recognized the stiff posture behind the wheel, Karen. She had her phone up, and though I couldn't hear her, I'd bet money she was narrating some fantasy about illegal entry. I made a point of turning to face her, lifting my own phone to film, and gave her a slow, deliberate wave. She lowered her camera but didn't drive off. She was staking me out now. I knew enough about escalation to see where this was headed, and I'd just added the obstruction incident to the growing file I intended to use when I turned the tables. By the third morning, I'd gotten used to the sound of lake birds as my alarm. I was halfway through tightening a loose hinge on the boathouse door when a white van rolled slowly up the drive, County Building and Safety Division stenciled in blue on the side. Two men in khaki shirts and reflective vests stepped out, clipboards in hand. "Morning," the older one said, flipping a laminated badge just fast enough for me not to catch the details. "We've got an emergency inspection order for this property. Structural safety concerns. Need full access to the interior immediately." I straightened up, wiping sawdust from my hands. Funny, I don't recall scheduling an inspection, and an emergency one would come from the county office with a posted notice. "Mind if I see that order?" He handed me a single sheet, the paper still curling from a fresh print job. I scanned it. No raised seal. The county letterhead was slightly off color, and the signature was from an engineer who'd retired 4 years ago, a man I'd once shared coffee with during a courthouse security case. I pulled my phone from my pocket, snapped a photo, and started scrolling contacts. The younger inspector shifted on his feet. "Sir, we're authorized to enter whether you—" I cut him off. "Hold that thought." When the county building supervisor picked up, I put the call on speaker. "Hey Jim, it's Cade. Got two of your guys here with an emergency inspection order signed by a ghost from your retirement roster. You send them?" There was a pause, then Jim's flat voice. "Absolutely not. We have no orders for your address. That document is bogus. Ask them to wait, and I'll have a deputy meet you." I ended the call and smiled at the pair. "Good news, fellas. Someone's on the way to verify your credentials. Why don't you relax right here?" The younger one muttered something about a scheduling mix-up and started back toward the van. I stepped into his path, just close enough for my shadow to cover him. "You leave. It's fleeing the scene of an attempted unlawful entry. Not a good look when the sheriff asks questions." 10 minutes later, a patrol car pulled in. The deputy listened to my recap, took the fake order, and ran the plate on the van. It came back registered to a law firm, one I recognized from the HOA's public filings. As the men were escorted to the cruiser for further questioning, I spotted movement by the tree line. Karen, in a wide-brimmed sun hat, pretending to check her phone while clearly watching the whole thing. Our eyes met for a split second before she turned and walked briskly toward the road. I took another photo, her, the van, the deputies, then filed it straight to my encrypted drive. This wasn't a neighborly spat anymore. This was a coordinated probe, and she'd just left fingerprints all over it. Moving day was supposed to feel good. After weeks of back and forth with contractors, deliveries, and unpacking in half-finished rooms, I was ready to make the place officially mine. The morning was cool, sky a clean blue, and I had a box of kitchenware in one hand when the crunch of tires on gravel made me glance toward the road. 2 county patrol cars rolled in, lights flashing but sirens silent. They pulled up side by side, blocking the drive just beyond the gate. I set the box down, already bracing for whatever fresh stunt this was. Both drivers' doors opened at once. "Mr. Cade Westbrook," one officer called. "That's me," I answered, walking toward them. "We've received a report of unlawful occupancy. Caller stated you've broken into this residence and are attempting to squat in it. We need to see identification and proof of ownership." I didn't need a crystal ball to guess who the caller was. Let me guess. Short, cardigan, HOA badge. Likes to talk with her hands? The younger deputy tried not to smirk. "We can't discuss the complainant, but if you could produce your documents." "No problem." I waved toward the porch. "Follow me. Everything's in my home office." As we walked, a familiar voice carried from the road. "Officers, thank you for coming so quickly." Karen stood there in a floral blouse, phone in hand, every inch the concerned citizen. That man forced his way into the Henderson property. The rightful owner moved out weeks ago. I held up a hand. "Save it." I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and retrieved a thick folder from the desk. Out came my driver's license, the original deed transfer, the notarized bill of sale, and, because I don't half-step, an iPad with the county property registry pulled up, my name highlighted on the parcel entry. The older deputy took his time scanning everything, tapping the iPad screen to zoom in on the registration date. He looked at his partner, then back at me. "Everything's in order." I crossed my arms. "So, unless you're here to help me unload this couch, I assume we're done." The younger one cleared his throat. "We'll just need to close out the call." "Ma'am?" Karen stepped closer, still holding her phone like it was Exhibit A. "Officers, he's lying. Those papers could be—" "Ma'am," the older deputy cut in, his tone firm. "We have verified the documentation with the county database in real time. This is Mr. Westbrook's residence. Filing a knowingly false report to emergency services is a criminal offense in this state. You need to be aware of that." Her mouth opened, then closed. A flush crept up her neck. I was misinformed." "I'll note that in the report," he said dryly. They walked her back toward the road, and though I couldn't hear the rest, the stiff set of her shoulders told me she wasn't enjoying the conversation. Within minutes, the cruisers were gone. Karen's SUV lingered for a heartbeat at the gate before rolling away. Back inside, I sat at the desk and added another entry to the growing incident log on my laptop. Date, time, names of responding officers, summary of the false 911 call. I attached the scanned receipts of the deed and bill of sale, plus the screenshots from the county registry. It wasn't paranoia, it was prep work. I'd been in enough courtrooms to know a paper trail wins cases. As I saved the file, my phone buzzed. It was a text from the neighbor 2 parcels over, a retired sheriff named Don who I'd met the week before. "Heard you had visitors. Word is she's pulled this stunt on 2 other owners before you, drove both out within a year." I stared at the message for a moment, then typed back, "Appreciate the heads up. She's not going to make it 3. Through the front window, the lake shimmered in the afternoon light, but my focus was on the thin dirt road where her SUV had vanished. Karen was playing a long game, layering false narratives, trying to get something to stick. But unlike whoever she'd run off before, I had both the training and the temperament to make sure every move she made became another nail in her own coffin. Some people build fences for privacy. I was building a case. A week later, just as I was starting to think I might get a stretch of quiet, the mail carrier honked twice at the gate and held up a thick, flat envelope. Certified delivery. I signed for it, glanced at the return address, and felt my jaw tighten. A law firm in Richmond whose name I recognized from the HOA's website. I slid it open at the kitchen counter. Inside was a court summons and a neatly stapled complaint. The Lakeview Shores HOA was suing me in county court, demanding the sale of my property be declared void. Their claim? That I'd purchased the home with encumbered obligations, specifically unpaid dues owed to the HOA by the previous owner. They wanted the property returned to the governance of the association and threatened liens if I failed to comply. It was absurd. I'd done a full title search. The place was clean. The complaint even attached a statement of arrears from the HOA's own records, showing nearly $8,000 in unpaid assessments. But I'd seen enough doctored paperwork in my time to notice the font mismatches and the suspicious absence of the most recent year's entries. I called my attorney, a barrel-chested ex-prosecutor named Alan Griggs, who had a reputation for dismantling HOA overreach. He answered on the second ring. "Westbrook, I was wondering when you'd call. They've been hinting about this." I forwarded the documents to him. 5 minutes later, he called back. "Yeah, that ledger's a fake. County court records show the last lien was satisfied and released over a year ago. They've just deleted that line and reformatted the table. Sloppy." "Can you get proof?" I asked. "Already in motion. I'll pull the lien release from the county clerk's archives, certified and sealed. Also, I've seen that law firm play this game. They file garbage like this, hoping you'll settle to avoid the headache." We're not settling. That night, I sat with Alan in my dining room, a laptop between us, going through every scrap of correspondence from the title company, the realtor, and the county registry. Alan flagged each certified record, creating a bulletproof chain from the release of the old lien to my purchase. But he didn't stop there. "We're going on offense," he said. "Fraudulent filing, defamation, abuse of process. And because they're trying to invalidate a lawful sale, we loop in the state attorney general. Real property fraud is in his wheelhouse." I called in a favor from 2 former colleagues, both retired marshals now working private sector. They agreed to dig into HOA's internal activity, public records requests, financial disclosures, and any whispers from vendors. Within 48 hours, they'd turned up a nugget. 3 weeks before I closed on the house, Karen had met with the HOA board to strategize acquisition of my parcel, citing its lake access as a community necessity. Alan grinned when he read that in the meeting minutes. That's intent. Now all we need is to tie her to the fake ledger, and we've got her by the throat. Before he left, we agreed on the next step, a formal response to the court that not only demolished their claim, but also laid out the beginnings of a counterattack. As Alan put it, "We're not just going to beat them. We're going to make them wish they'd never heard your name." When the house went quiet again, I poured a bourbon and stood at the back porch, looking out over the dark lake. She'd escalated from petty harassment to full-scale legal warfare. But in doing so, she'd given me the venue I wanted, a courtroom, where evidence matters and theatrics don't. And that was terrain I knew how to win on. Alan didn't waste a second. By the third day, he had a formal answer to the HOA's complaint ready to go, 24 meticulously drafted pages, each one dismantling their claims with surgical precision. Every paragraph was backed by certified county records, recorded deeds, and zoning maps that left no room for misunderstandings. But the real blow wasn't in the rebuttal, it was in the counterclaim. Alan had gone for the jugular: fraud, extortion, obstruction of access to private property, abuse of emergency services, and conspiracy to unlawfully acquire real estate. It was a list that, if proven, wouldn't just cost them money, it could put some of them in jail. He didn't stop there. Buried midway through was a separate count naming the law firm that had provided those so-called county inspectors in the white van, listing them as co-defendants. Alan even included a full appendix of photos and witness statements, just in case they thought this was a bluff. The morning after filing, I met him in his office, a compact but sharp-looking space in downtown Charlottesville. The walls were lined with well-worn legal volumes, framed verdict certificates, and, oddly enough, a mounted largemouth bass glaring down over his desk, like it owned the place. Alan leaned back in his chair, sliding a neat stack of sealed envelopes across the table toward me. "We're serving the board members individually," he said, his voice calm but edged with satisfaction, "not just the HOA entity. Personal service makes them realize they can't hide behind the association's bank account. It hits them right in their own pockets." I picked up one envelope, feeling the weight of it. "And Karen." Alan's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Karen gets hers hand-delivered by a process server with a body cam. I want every second of her reaction recorded, tone of voice, facial expression, the whole show. You'll thank me later." While Alan moved the legal chess pieces, my 2 retired U.S. Marshal friends, both men who could read an investigation like others read the morning paper, were busy digging through paper trails. They pulled the HOA's most recent IRS Form 990, combed through vendor contracts, and scrutinized expense reports line by line. One entry lit up like a warning flare: a $25,000 payment to a Richmond law firm labeled as Community Infrastructure Consulting. The invoice was pure euphemism: strategic property acquisition measures, a sanitized way of saying, "We're paying lawyers to figure out how to take Westbrook's land." I had Alan make certified copies of every page, then sent the whole packet to the state attorney general's office with a formal complaint. Less than a week later, my phone rang. "This is Investigator Laura Cortez, Virginia Attorney General's office," the voice said, crisp, businesslike. "Mr. Westbrook, I've reviewed the materials you submitted. The falsified expense classification and the apparent misuse of member dues for non-community purposes could expose the board to criminal liability. We're opening a preliminary inquiry. You'll need to be prepared to testify if it escalates." I didn't hesitate. "I'll be ready whenever you call." The same afternoon, while checking the perimeter near my gate, I spotted a woman with a camera snapping shots of the HOA sign and the property line markers. She introduced herself as a reporter from the Charlottesville Gazette. "Mr. Westbrook, several residents have reached out to us about Lakeview Shores HOAs. Let's say aggressive governance style," she said, raising an eyebrow. "I understand you're currently in litigation with them." I kept my tone measured, careful not to hand Karen a soundbite she could twist. "I'm defending my property from unlawful claims. Beyond that, everything I'm saying is already a matter of public record." She grinned like a cat who'd found the cream. Then the public record is about to get a lot more interesting. That evening, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Neighbors sending me links to a front-page article. "Lakeview Shores HOA accused of overreach, fraud in property dispute." It quoted anonymous residents describing intimidation tactics, selective rule enforcement, and harassment campaigns that mirrored my own experience almost word for word. By the next board meeting, the internal fallout was in full swing. My contact inside, the landscaper who'd been quietly feeding me tidbits, reported that several board members were openly questioning Karen's leadership. A few wanted to cut their losses and settle. Others were terrified of being named in my counterclaim. Karen, of course, dismissed all of it as media spin and people not understanding the bigger picture. The following morning, Alan called. "They're on the ropes. Now's the moment to turn the screws. I'm filing a motion to compel production of all HOA communications concerning your property, emails, meeting minutes, text messages. If they drag their feet, we'll go for sanctions." Judges love that. I didn't need convincing. Every piece of paper they handed over would either be ammunition or proof they were hiding something. And if they were hiding something, well, I knew from experience. Judges had a special kind of patience for the truth and zero patience for obstruction. Karen had kicked this off thinking she could corner me with petty politics and a rubber stamp board. But now, she'd walk straight into a legal arena where I had every advantage, and I planned to keep her there until the gavel came down for the last time. The first hearing on our motions was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in the county courthouse, the kind of old brick building with creaky wooden benches and a lingering smell of floor polish. Alan wanted me there early, so I arrived with time to watch the Lakeview Shores delegation file in. Karen was, predictably, front and center, wearing a navy skirt suit and the kind of pearl necklace you see in political campaign photos. Behind her trailed two board members I recognized from the neighborhood, both looking like they'd rather be anywhere else, and a man in an ill-fitting suit I assumed was their attorney. Alan leaned over as we sat down. "Watch their faces when we start dropping exhibits. I don't think they realize just how much we've got." The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Davenport, opened with our motion to compel production of all communications regarding my property. The HOA's lawyer tried to argue it was overly broad and intrusive. Alan stood, voice calm but cutting, and laid out our evidence. The $25,000 payment to the law firm marked as strategic property acquisition, the fake arrears ledger, and the incident reports from the sheriff's office about the blocked road and the false 911 call. "Your Honor," Alan concluded, "these are not isolated misunderstandings. They're steps in a coordinated campaign to force my client into surrendering property they have no legal claim to. Every communication about Mr. Westbrook's parcel is directly relevant to his defense and our counterclaims." Judge Davenport glanced at the HOA's counsel. "You'll produce the records within 21 days. Failure to do so will result in sanctions. Understood. The lawyer nodded, but Karen's jaw clenched so hard I thought she might crack a molar. Then came the moment Alan had been waiting for, introducing the meeting minutes we'd obtained from my contacts. He handed copies to the court clerk, and as they were read into the record, I watched the color drain from the board members' faces. In black and white, 3 weeks before I closed on my property, Karen had told the board we should explore ways to bring the Ridgewater parcel under HOA control. Its lake access could be designated as a community asset. Acquisition, voluntary or otherwise, would benefit all members. The judge raised an eyebrow. Voluntary or otherwise, she repeated aloud, her voice carrying across the silent room. Karen's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. That's an unfortunate choice of words taken out of context. Alan didn't miss a beat. The context, Your Honor, is a documented pattern of interference, fraud, and intimidation aimed squarely at my client. This isn't out of context. It's the roadmap. When the lunch recess hit, the HOA contingent scattered into the hallway. I stepped outside for some air, only to find myself in Karen's path. She stopped a few feet away, the polite mask gone. "You think this circus proves anything?" she said, her voice low and sharp. "You're making enemies you don't understand." I met her gaze, steady. I understand exactly who I'm dealing with, and I understand how evidence works. That's the difference between us. She gave a humorless laugh and stalked off toward the elevators. Back in court, Alan unveiled the kicker, a sworn statement from one of the inspectors who'd shown up at my property. Faced with potential charges for trespassing and presenting false credentials, the younger one had cut a deal. He admitted the job came from a man named Brian Eldridge, Karen's nephew, who ran a local print shop and did occasional errands for the HOA. He'd been paid cash to print the fake order and pose as county staff. When the judge heard that, she ordered the matter referred to the district attorney for potential criminal prosecution. Karen's lawyer tried to object, but it was drowned out by the sound of the gavel. The rest of the afternoon was a blur of procedural wins. The judge denied the HOA's motion to dismiss my counterclaims, approved expedited discovery, and explicitly warned them against destroying or altering any documents. By the time we walked out of the courthouse, Alan was practically humming. "They're in a corner now," he said, holding the stack of court orders like a trophy. "They can't run, and every step they take will be under a microscope. If they slip once, it's over." For me, the satisfaction wasn't in watching Karen lose ground. It was in knowing she'd done this to herself. Every petty blockade, every fake paper, every whispered lie had built the foundation of her own collapse. And I was just making sure the whole thing stayed on the record. 2 weeks later, the HOA's world started to cave in. The 21-day deadline for producing their communications came and went without a single file being turned over. Alan immediately filed a motion for sanctions, and Judge Davenport granted it with visible irritation. The HOA was ordered to pay $5,000 in attorney's fees to me directly, and given an additional 7 days to comply. She also added a pointed warning. Failure to produce these records may result in a default judgment on the counterclaims. It was like watching a dam develop cracks. Within 48 hours, Alan received a package, not from the HOA's attorney but anonymously, containing a USB drive and a typed note. "I can't be part of this anymore." The files inside were gold. Months of board emails, text screenshots, and internal memos. Reading through them, I saw everything in plain language. Karen's directives to turn up the heat on me, her instructions to the treasurer to reallocate funds to the law firm, and even an email thread about the optics of sending fake inspectors. One chilling message from her to the board said, "Once he's financially strained and can't keep up with litigation, we make an offer. No one else will touch that property while this is hanging over him." Alan's grin as he scrolled through the files was almost feral. "This is intent, strategy, and execution, all in writing. A jury will eat this alive." The state attorney general's investigator, Laura Cortez, was equally blunt when I forwarded the material. "Mr. Westbrook, this crosses from civil to criminal. We'll be adding conspiracy, attempted fraud, and misuse of community funds to the list of charges, and you'll want to be in the courtroom when the indictments drop." The news spread fast. By the next HOA meeting, half the seats on the board were empty. Members had resigned en masse, citing personal reasons. Karen, however, doubled down. She called an emergency community meeting and tried to paint me as a vindictive outsider tearing the neighborhood apart. That's when the Gazette published their follow-up. State investigation targets Lakeview Shores HOA leadership. The article quoted sources close to the case, describing the USB leak and the mounting criminal allegations. The following Friday morning, as I was clearing brush near my driveway, 2 unmarked county vehicles pulled up. Laura Cortez stepped out with 2 sheriff's deputies. She gave me a short nod before they headed straight to the HOA office. Less than an hour later, Karen was led out in handcuffs, her perfect pearl necklace slightly askew, her expression frozen between outrage and disbelief. Her arrest wasn't the end. It was the point of no return. Allen moved for a summary judgment on my counterclaims, citing the overwhelming evidence and the criminal case now in motion. The judge granted it, awarding me damages for legal costs, emotional distress, and the unlawful interference with my property, nearly $160,000 in total. The cherry on top came a month later when the criminal trial concluded. Karen was convicted on multiple counts and sentenced to 12 years in state prison. The board members who'd played along took plea deals for probation and restitution. I didn't celebrate with champagne or a victory party. Instead, I stood at the edge of my land, looking out over the lake she'd tried to claim, and felt the kind of quiet satisfaction that comes from knowing you've protected what's yours. Karen had wanted to make me an example. She succeeded, just not in the way she planned.